You've helped people at Apple, Google, Meta.
We spend about 40% of our work time persuading people. And that's about 24 minutes an hour. They struggle to communicate their ideas with clarity. So their worth is here, their voice is here.
Leopold Ajami has taught countless professionals the art of communication, persuasion, and public speaking. So this process actually starts even before you speak.
So there's 4 phases that I teach all my clients. The first phase is,
Do you ever get a pushback?
I was a terrible presenter. All of these skills are transferable and learnable.
The element of fear is just something that doesn't go away.
People will not just go and buy your product. You need to take them through a journey for them to say yes to that product. Every time you're telling a story, you need to have these 5 C's.
Hello everyone. Today's conversation is one of the best that I've had with a guest. If you're looking to communicate with impact, this episode is for you. We've covered pretty much everything for you, starting from understanding effective communication, mastering body language, overcoming fears, and getting anyone to say yes to you. But before we dive in, let me tell you that this episode will change the way you approach your communication and influence others. Let's dive in if you're ready for this change. Thank you so much, Leopold, for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So let's begin with the end in mind. So by the end of this conversation, what I would like to have, and for our audience, the techniques and the sort of playbook which we can use to hear yes more often from others.
Yeah.
I hope that makes sense. I'm just trying to make the end clear.
I hope
in our
it
heads.
makes sense because that's the title of my upcoming book. So
Absolutely,
I hope it
absolutely.
makes sense.
Absolutely
Yeah.
great to hear. So let's start with when you say yes, what exactly do you mean by that?
So it's when people agree to your proposal, when people nod to your idea, when people say, yeah, I want to go with you, I like you, I want to work with you. So there's a process here to help people make better decision and say yes to you. And nothing is more frustrating than having a great idea, but not the ability to make people say yes to that idea. And what I notice is that when people say no to your idea, in your mind, you feel as if they're saying no to you. See? So yeah, it's this, basically behind that process is a science that's called ethical persuasion, which is originated by Dr. Robert Cialdini, the author of Influence and Persuasion. So he's the godfather of influence.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love that book.
Yeah.
It's the Bible of
It is.
influencing people.
Absolutely. And by the way, it's been considered the #1 business book of all time.
Yes, I know.
So it's stunning.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So it's the communication, right? And you call it voice, I believe, in your sort of, in your coaching and teachings. So when we talk about communication or voice, what do we exactly mean by that?
By voice,
Yes.
what I mean by that. So I usually say I help leaders design a voice that amplifies their worth. And the reason why I use the word voice, even though my coaching is not about singing, right? But when I say voice, it's because I want to think about your voice as the instrument of your thinking, right? So whenever you're communicating with someone, these words that I'm using now are the result of my years of thinking, right? And the clarity of my ideas. So the problem that I notice is that there are many leaders out there, including myself, at some time in my life, where their worth is very high in terms of achievement, right? They're successful, they're at a certain position. However, they struggle to communicate their ideas with clarity. So their worth is here, their voice is here. So I help them design that voice so that they can not just match their worth, but actually amplify their worth.
Beautiful. So is it the verbal component when you say voice? Is it something when we speak, or does it have some other components as well?
It's so many things. So one, it's the content of your ideas, which comes through your voice. So it's the content, it's the methodology. So the structure, how do you structure ideas, right? So when you're talking to someone, when you're presenting an idea, is there a logical, emotional, credible structure that you use, or it's just, all over the place? So the content and the methodology, and also you have the non-verbal voice or non-verbal communication, right?
Yeah.
So the use of your hands, your body, the pace. Imagine all the time I'm talking like this and you ask me all the questions and you're like, well, no. So you have to use your voice in a certain way to play with your pace, with your volume. So all of that constitute that process of designing your voice.
That's amazing. So we're not talking about the pitch of your tone,
No.
the voice that is coming from your throat. We're talking about the body language. We're talking about the tone itself. We're talking about maybe pausing in between. We're talking about the volume as well, perhaps.
Yeah.
And we're talking about the content. These are so many things to think about when we're talking about voice, how our audience would think about it. But how do you simplify this for people?
Well, just so all what you mentioned are for me in the delivery part, your pace, all of that. But think about your conversation, your latest conversation. Someone asks you a question, right? You have to use your voice to explain your ideas or to have a conversation. So primarily, that voice that you're using is the result of your thinking. So number one is not your pace, is not your volume, is not your body, is your thinking, the clarity of your thoughts and the method by which you convey ideas, right? And we don't pay much attention to that process. We assume that I know what I'm going to talk about. Yeah, I'm going to talk about this and that and that. And so we use our voice in a way that doesn't give it justice, right? Because it's not the bridge between our mind and then to our audience's minds or heart. So that process is a design process. You have to design it. You have to work on your thoughts, on your ideas, so that you can communicate clearly to your audience.
So this process actually starts even before you speak.
Yes, absolutely.
It's in your head, right? I mean,
absolutely.
You have to articulate your thoughts. You need to be clear about your ideas. Only then you can speak and convince other people, right?
Absolutely. The speaking part, the delivery, is the last process.
Wow.
So I have something that I call speak in 4D, right? So there's 4 phases that I teach all my clients. The first phase is discovery. So the first phase is reflective, introspective, where you have to look inward, understand what you're made of, what are your values, all of that, right? So you have to, the stories that are within you that you never told. So discovery. And then structure. How do you structure your thoughts, your ideas, right? So there's techniques to that. And then what's the content? What do you want to say, right? All of that is on paper, right? The last part is delivery, is where you actually stand on stage or you have a conversation or whatever, and you deliver your ideas. See, that's the last part of the process.
Let me just say this again. It's so amazing. The voice comes last.
Yes.
Right? Although it's something that becomes really impactful, but the first thing is the content, the clarity of your thoughts, and the formulation of your thoughts. Then comes the voice. And once you have formulated your thoughts, only then you can deliver an impactful message.
Absolutely.
Wow. Great. Now, you train a lot of leaders. I've seen that you've helped people at Apple, Google, Meta, and many other hugely successful companies, and I'm sure they have learned a lot from you.
And I from them.
Absolutely. Now, what I am fascinated by is that teaching leaders, people who've actually at a certain stage in their lives they've attained the title of a leader, or by default by their sort of delivery or their impact, they are already leaders. What you're suggesting here is that those leaders are not aware of their voice. They're not aware of how to deliver their messages. There is always a sense of, let's say, improvement that everyone should be aware about. Of
Yeah, all of these. But I would add two things. One, which is one of my clients told me, he said, you know why I hired you? I said, why? He's like, you're a ghost thinker. And I stole that word. Now I want to put it on my website. And so it's the same way that you hire a ghost writer to help you write a book, right? We all need a ghost thinker to help us think and, share ideas and formulate them. So that's the first reason, because no matter who you are, no matter the level, the title, we all need to sharpen our thinking, right? And definitely that's what I do when I'm coaching leaders. I learn from them more than they learn from me, probably, right? So that's the first part. But the second part is I help them with the science behind presenting, not just the art of presenting, the science of presenting and the science of persuading, the science of helping others say yes to you, of influencing people ethically, right? And we never learn that. Most leaders, it's not their fault, but it's not just in our process, specifically academically, to teach people how to change behavior, how to motivate people to say yes to you. And that's a crucial component of communication.
I can definitely relate to this. I mean, in my own journey, I was never confident in my own self when it came to speaking in front of others. I always lacked confidence, and I always lacked content as well, by the way. I never read any books until the age of 32. But it's after certain point in my life, like, after the age of 32, when I started reading books, that I started having content. I can definitely relate to this. And then once I had the content, which I, continue to have now, formulation of thoughts, then, delivery is the next stage.
Yeah.
So I've struggled myself with for example, all of these things.
Yeah. By the way, I highly resonate with that. And if someone is watching this from my university, they will tell you, I was a terrible presenter. Actually, I remember when I presented my final project in university, I took an oath that I would never, ever stand in front of an audience and present, right? I took an oath now that I will never get off the stage. You see? So
amazing turnaround.
It's a turnaround because you learn it. We learn from other people, from books, from content, from experts, right? So all of these skills are transferable and learnable.
So what you're suggesting here is that you can always change things.
Definitely.
Even if at certain stage in your journey, you're not confident about your voice or communication, you can always gain that confidence.
Yes.
That's very important to know. Now, in terms of the confidence, let's talk about, people presenting in front of other people. What I tend to see, and from my own experience, the element of fear is just something that doesn't go away. Every single person I know of is somehow fearful while speaking in front of others, and especially in terms of large audience. And to the extent I know, even the most accomplished speakers, they have this fear when they go on stage, for a few moments. How do you overcome, if at all, this fear?
Well, there's so many. So the first question you should ask is, what's the source of that fear? You have to understand when you're working with someone, is that fear a result of being judged by other people? Is it a fear of the content you have? Is it a fear of the methodology? You're not sure if the way you're presenting is right. So there's so many reasons. So first step is to understand what's the source of that fear, right? And the second step, which I think you put it beautifully, like you have to gain confidence. The way you gain confidence primarily is in your mind, right? You gain confidence by knowing that you know what you know. That's crucial. So fear is mainly a fear of something that you don't know. You don't know how people will judge you. You don't know if your content is right. You don't know how people will receive it, right? But if you know that you know, this is a very important concept. I know what I know, and I know that my method is right. Right? Even if the whole world is saying I'm wrong, I know that I know. Right? I can prove it. If you're scientific in your approach, you'll never be afraid anymore. And in fact, you'll turn that fear into feedback. You say, I'm not going to be afraid. Actually, I'm going to present to receive feedback so I can learn and grow. See? Now, there's always this nudge of probably anxiousness or nerves racking, before you go to stage. And it's okay. That means you care, right? You care about your content.
Yeah. So what you're suggesting is that you can overcome this fear by knowing yourself. You know what you know, and that confidence of knowing your content will actually eliminate the fear. But there's certain element of, let's say, anxiety or little bit of anxiousness that will always remain for anyone, even if you are an accomplished speaker.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that should remain.
Yeah. And I want to give you, just to clarify, an example. Like I told you before, I started going to the gym, right? Like I consider myself a confident speaker. When I go on stage, I'm confident. Why I'm confident? Because I know my content. I know what I know. I know what I don't know. When I started going to the gym, I didn't feel confident. Why? Because I don't know what I'm doing. I still don't know the names of the exercises. I still don't know if I'm doing it technically right. I'm not confident there. Right? Now, we can talk later if you want on the difference between confidence and self-esteem, because there's a big difference.
Absolutely.
But I'm not confident with that skill. I'm confident with the skill that I know. You see?
You need some guidance from someone. It can be from a coach, from an expert like you, or from some other medium. Okay, let's talk about the body language, I guess.
Yeah, just before we move there, because I think what you said is so powerful, I don't want it to pass. The word guidance here is crucial. And guidance, as you said, doesn't mean a coach. But you can get guidance sometimes from a child, right? I know my 5 years old daughter, she's my best guide, right? And I test my ideas with her. If they work on her, they will work on anyone else, Guidance, you can get it from a stranger on a bus. And what do you think about this idea? And you just talk to them.
Correct.
And it's a test of your clarity and of your ideas, and you're giving and receiving. So the guidance doesn't have to be just from an expert, right? It's a combination.
Absolutely. So talking about the body language.
Yeah.
So let's dissect voice or communication into sort of various components. We have the pitch of your voice, the tone, the pause, the body language, the delivery part overall. I mean, how do you sort of, take each of these components and, educate people how to improve yourself on these?
Most people, when I say, for example, I'm a public speaking coach, they assume that I'm going to teach them those and how to present on stage. But in my case, no, that's the last stage. So I have to stress that delivery and body language and all, that's the last stage. And actually, it comes as a result of you knowing what you want to say, right? On a few structuring your ideas. So it comes naturally. Now, I help them with so many techniques. And the more they practice, the more they make it better. But I'll give you one just to see, I love frameworks. I think of myself as someone who always builds frameworks because frameworks are scalable. Frameworks are shortcuts. You give it to someone, you help them, learn a certain technique in a quick way, right? So one of the things I call it the candy principle. So think about it this way. There's two ways you can give a child a candy. The first one is you say, hey, you want a candy? Take that candy, right? And the child would take the candy and say, thank you. Another way is to say, close your eyes. Close it. No peeking. I have something very special for you. Open. Now, it's the same candy, but it's a completely different experience. And through observation, you see that children are more likely to resonate with the second approach, right? Because you built an experience to them, right? The same principles apply to public speaking, communication, and persuasion, right? For example, if I'm like, one of my famous line that I call power line is specifically when I'm talking to leaders is, what you say backstage or what you do backstage puts you on stage.
Beautiful.
Okay? Or if I'm talking about the importance of being succinct, I say, if they miss your point, you miss your mark. Now, imagine I'm telling you the same line like this. Oh, Muhammad, you know what I learned in life is that if people miss your point, you will miss your mark. And so it's very important for us. That's giving you candy just like that. But if I want to build an experience, I would do this. You know what I learned in my life? If people miss your point, you will miss your mark. A completely different experience for you. You see? Because I said it slowly, I paused, I teased you. You see? So that's a principle of delivery. So it's not just how you use your hands and your voice, it's how you say the words that are important to your audience. Make sense?
Absolutely, it does. Now, let's go backstage.
Okay, let's go backstage.
Using your phrase, which is very appealing to me. So when you say backstage, what you do backstage puts you on stage. What do you exactly mean by that? To the extent I understand so far is that it's the content which prepares you for your actual delivery. Do you want to elaborate your own phrase?
What I love about the formulation of that phrase is that it depends whom you're talking to, you can reframe it. So if we're talking about communication, I would say yes. What you do with the content, with your method, helps you clarify your ideas on stage, help you present and persuade people, right? But it can also be to anyone. For example, I can say, it's what you do with your time. It's what you do with your mind. It's the ideas. I can tell you, Muhammad, all these movies that you're watching are actually not fulfilling. They're destroying your view of life. That's the backstage. You're putting inside your mind movies that are not enriching, that are, lame, what have you. Right? And if you do that, it's going to affect your life, which is the stage. You see? So it depends whom I'm talking to and what topic. I can reframe that line to mean a different thing, which universally is the same. Make sense?
It does, absolutely. Now, when you say these things to very mature people who are in established leadership roles, I just want to understand how do they receive it? Do you ever get a pushback that whatever you're saying is really not relevant or it's not going to help them? Do you hear a different point of view from others, from leaders you're training?
Yeah, I mean, especially in the first phase. And again, back to persuasion, people want to build some kind of a certainty about your expertise before they say yes to you, right? And so even if they're working with you, it doesn't mean that they're going to agree with everything you say, which is plausible. I think that's a good thing. They don't have to agree, right? So yeah, pushbacks and all of that is normal. But I think, and it happens every time, the moment they go on stage after some training and they make an impact, and I always tell them, and if someone is listening now, they will smile. I always tell them, one of the measure of success, the most important one, is when you get down from the stage and people line up to speak to you.
Wow.
See?
That's amazing.
This is where you know you're successful. One of the measure is for people to repeat your words. So if you finish your talk, your presentation, your pitch, and someone comes and tell you, you know what you just said, what you do backstage puts you on stage. Thank you. That was so inspiring. You're successful. See? If they're lining up to ask you a question, to challenge you, to what have you, you're successful. So when they experience that, the pushback is reduced. Because again, it's not about me, it's about the tools. the tools work. You know?
So it really boils down to what is received by the audience, what is received by the listener
Yeah.
or the person you're communicating to. If your message is not well received or understood, or someone doesn't resonate with it, you've actually failed.
Or you're speaking to the wrong audience.
True.
So,
True.
yeah.
You talk about ethical persuasion. What do you mean by that?
So it's a way, and again, this is not my formulation. This is Dr. Cialdini's formulation, and I'm one of the certified coaches, so I trained under him. So the way he puts it is, you have to distinguish, especially because the concept of persuasion meant for so many years manipulation, right? And it's been used by leaders who manipulated people to bring them to their direction, right? So he used the term ethical to say that there's a science of ethics behind the science of persuasion, and that the purpose of your persuasion should not be to hurt other people or to manipulate them, rather to benefit them. So the reason why I should persuade you to say yes, it's because it's beneficial for you and I to work together. You see? It's because it's true. My persuasion is based on some truth. It's because it's factual. So all of these are crucial in your persuasion to make it ethical. You see? As opposed to manipulative, and now I personally don't think you need the word ethical. It's persuasion, because persuasion doesn't have any evaluation, right? It's just helping people say yes. But in this day and time, we need that term to explain that, as opposed to manipulation.
Yeah, because of the historical stigma attached to this term.
Yes.
That's very interesting. Now, when you say ethical persuasion, I understood, what you exactly mean. Just to clarify the context, I mean, do you see people or clients that you speak to that they actually hire you to educate them on persuasion, but sometimes they're using it for manipulating people?
Yeah.
And how do you handle that situation?
Very interesting question. And what I learned is that so many people don't know that that's unethical. So I'll give you an example. If you're working with a company and the company says, "Oh, I want to use the principle of let's say scarcity," right? And the way I want to use it is to tell people, "Well, we're selling this, bag, and we have only 10 bags left." So the first question I ask them, they're not being unethical, but they think they're using the principles. Okay, wait a minute. Do you have actually 10 bags left? Oh, no, we have a full, inventory. We have a lot. And then why are you saying it? Why are you saying you have 10 bags left? You see? So they don't know that that's unethical. So my role is to help them establish what makes your persuasion ethical and how to still activate the principle of scarcity without lying. You see? So what are the techniques that you can still activate that principle that there's a limited resource without lying, without exaggerating, without manipulating your audience? In fact, by being true. And that's the science behind it.
Beautiful. Can you give an example where you would have, distinguished the concept?
Yeah, I can give you a couple. Like, if you think about it, about scarcity, suppose you're selling this chessboard, let's say, and you used to think that the best way for me to activate scarcity is to tell people on my website that I still have, it's sold out, or it still have 10 pieces left.
Yeah.
Instead, and it's not true, right? Instead, what you can learn from scarcity is, wait a minute, how can I create a specific bundle that is scarce? So how can I create scarcity? You see? So for a limited time, if you get that chess, you're going to get with it that other thing. That bundle is scarce. You see? Because it's lasting for, 10 pieces or a couple of days, what have you. You see, so there are small tools you can use to be true to your product, true to your audience, not lie, but create these triggers to help people say yes.
Interesting. Just playing devil's advocate.
Yes.
Why does it really matter that I have to bundle this?
Well, how can you sell the product? So one of the things we have to understand about human behavior and decision making is that people will not just go and buy your product just because they saw it or what have you. You need to take them through a journey for them to say yes to that product, right? And so you have to create that journey, right? Now, there's two ways to create it. You can be unethical or you can be ethical. See, I'll give you another example that is completely ethical and persuasive. There's a brand that I really love, shoes brand. And on their website, what they say is, we don't do discounts. We don't have coupon codes. We don't have, influencers. What we do is actually our prices are calculated in a fair way. So all year long, this is one price you take for all our product. And that's very persuasive. Why? Because you help me reduce my uncertainty. Will you do a discount? Will you not do a discount? So you help me increase my uncertainty to say yes to you. See, so there's so many techniques you can use, but you have to influence people. You have to nudge them to say yes to you.
Correct. Just going back to the very basics of influence. I mean, I just wanted to highlight this and, for our audience that, we are, to my understanding, at any given time during our lives, we are actually either being influenced or we are influencing others.
Yeah.
Do you want to shed some light on that?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of study showed that we spend, one of them is Daniel Pink, we spend about 40% of our work time persuading people. And that's about 24 minutes an hour. Okay, so it's insane. Imagine.
Insane. Absolutely.
Insane. Every hour you're spending it 24 minutes persuading people to say yes to you. Now, that doesn't have to be with products and services. It can be with agreeing on your ideas. It can be, could you send me this proposal? Could you do that? How many times we've seen in an organization, teams are not being able to work together because of some tension. Or, I asked them to send me this proposal or what have you, but they didn't, right? Because they never learned how to make people say yes to them, you see? And so it's a very flourishing and beneficial exercise to learn the science of persuasion, because you'll be happier. You see, you'll be happier and you'll make the other person happier, and you'll have a win-win outcome.
Correct.
See?
So the way I relate to this is that, since we are either being influenced or we are influencing others, regardless, I think people are missing out on that, but just not understanding, not educating themselves on, on this important aspect of their lives.
So it's interesting here. I want to share with you a framework that your audience can benefit from, which I learned from Dr. Cialdini, and it's absolutely life-changing. Okay, so just briefly, in his books, he highlighted 7 principles of persuasion, which are reciprocity, liking, unity, social proof, authority, consistency, scarcity. Right?
Absolutely.
Now, they sound so simple, but there's a whole science behind them. And once you learn how to activate and amplify them, it's a game changer for you and the person you want to work with.
Do you want to shed some light on each of these 7 principles of Dr. Cialdini? Because they're so universally known and the book is so popular.
Yeah.
And you've rightly mentioned that it's one of the best actually, business books of all time. So I think it's important for our audience to understand these principles very briefly.
Well, I would say read the book.
Absolutely.
Read it from the master himself.
Yeah.
But I'll make it very simple. So, and I love the way he puts it, that these are 7 universal principles, right? It's universal because they transcend cultures and religions and behaviors and countries. They exist everywhere. So, for example, think about the principle of reciprocity. if you do something for me, I'm more likely to return that favor, right? If you invite me to your birthday, I'm more likely willing to invite you to mine,
True.
right? Now, here's the beauty. I might not, I have free will. I might say, you know what? I didn't like Muhammad. You know, I don't want to invite him to my birthday. The principle still works. Why? Because we're never going to have a relationship. That's the first principle there are, right? So if I don't return the favor or the gift or the invitation, we're not going to have a relationship. You see? So that's reciprocity. It's about give and take.
True.
People are more likely to return what they've been given first, right?
True.
Liking is about the principle of, liking other people, finding something to like in other people. That could be through similarities and through praise, right? So for example, we like each other because we found similar values, similar ideas. We connected on LinkedIn, right?
Absolutely.
So, and then also praising. I can praise you about my work. If you go today to one of your employees and you say, you know what, I've been watching you, how you're doing this process of building that proposal or that strategic document. And I say that's a very interesting process because 1, 2, 3, 4. That specific praise is more valuable than anything else.
True. Absolutely.
It's absolutely amazing.
I've tested it
You know
myself.
that. So liking. Unity. People are more likely to say yes to people who are like them. Think about a football team, right? It's all about unity, right? So that's a very powerful principle. We can unpack them all if you want. I don't know how much time we have. So reciprocity, liking, unity. Social proof. People are more likely to say yes when they see other people doing the same thing, right?
Correct.
So I'm more likely to trust you if I hear person X, Y, Z saying good things about you.
Online reviews, for example.
One
Big
of them,
example. Yeah.
One of them, right? But there's more to that.
Yeah.
So online reviews and testimonials are scratching the surface.
Yeah.
I think the genius of Dr. Cialdini is that he showed you how actually you can take that one insight and amplify it and use it in everything,
Amazing.
even if you don't have testimonials and reviews or what have you.
Amazing.
Authority, consistency, and scarcity. Scarcity is beautiful, is that people are more likely to pursue what is less available, right? A limited edition bag or what have you, right?
True.
Something that is going out of stock in a limited time.
True.
But also, which is something I mentioned in my chapter, what is the most limited resource in the world? You.
Yeah.
You.
Yeah.
You are an irreplaceable, unrepeatable, unique human being.
True. Absolutely. I never thought about that, by the way.
Really? All you have to do is to show people your uniqueness. And that you, that combination that forms Muhammad Tariq becomes unique and scarce.
Yeah.
You can work with anyone else, but you cannot work with, but there's only one Muhammad Tariq. See that? So there's a lot of expansion on each principle. And the last one is, I think one of my favorite is consistency and commitment.
Yeah.
So this is a principle that people are more likely to commit to what they previously said or done. So if we're having a conversation and you tell me, you know what, one of the most important thing for me as a leader is to help people, my team grow. I can use that to hold you committed to that phrase, right? I can tell you, you know what, the reason why you want to take that product or the reason why that training is important to you because you told me that you're committed to your employee and to your team. You see? So raising that to the level of awareness holds people, because you don't want to see it as breaking your image. You don't want to see it as breaking your word, right?
Absolutely.
So yeah, these are very brief.
Beautiful. I'm sure our audience would love to read this book. I've read it. Now, one of the key components of communication is storytelling, which I find really to be central in any communication. I think the best speakers and best communicators are the best storytellers too. What is your take, and how do you explain storytelling?
Well, I can talk for hours about storytelling, but I'll raise a problem. One of the main problem with storytelling, specifically for companies and leaders, is that they assume when they hear the word storytelling, is that I have to become a novelist. I have to tell these stories, and stories are too emotional, and I'm in the business world. But essentially, storytelling is about two things, if I can bring it down:
Yeah.
choice and change. Right? Storytelling is about what are the choices that you've made in that journey, and what's the change that happened that made you realize this or that lesson. So I can tell a story in 10 seconds, right? It doesn't have to be a whatever. It can be a short story that you can tweak it. And so I think, one, it's inescapable. That's what we do every single day. We tell stories. But two, it's crucial for any organization, any leader to learn that art. And I can give you a framework if you like. But we need to learn that art so that, again, we influence people and influence ourselves.
And what is that framework?
So it's simple. Think about it as the 5C. This is something I teach in my workshop. There's a big one called the 9C, but I will give you the 5C. It's easy to remember. Every time you're telling a story, you need to have these 5Cs. Character. Right? That character can be you, can be someone else, can be your company, can be your product, what have you. Character. Conflict. If there's no problem, there's no story.
True.
Right? You need to have that character, that product has to have a problem, a conflict. The third is conversations, which is not very obvious. But if you think about it, in every story, there's a dialogue. In fact, what constitutes a story is action and dialogue, right? So there must be a dialogue. So when you're telling a story, use conversations, use dialogue. Don't just tell, show. Right? Invite people to that conversation. Show, if you're a company or what have you, what people are saying about you, about your problem. So character, conflict, conversation, change. Right? There's that hero is going through a journey, has a problem, goes through, meets a guide, right? And then he learns a certain lesson. And that lesson brings about a certain change. See? What's that change? That change could be the outcome, right? You helped me build my company. What's that outcome? What's that change? What happened not just to my company, but to me, to the families who work with me, right? Etc. And the last one is, so character, conflict, conversations, change, carry out message. And the carry out message is, what's the lesson in one line, right?
Beautiful.
So what are you learning from that story? How can you put it in one message that is remembered and repeated? These are 5 lines. You tell a story.
Let's talk about your book now.
Yes.
Do you want to spill the beans? If yes, how far?
Well, it's coming out soon, so I can talk a little bit about it. I have to say first, it's I'm a co-author, so we are 8 co-authors who are certified to use and to teach and to coach people using the Cialdini method. And each one of us is coming from a different industry and from a different expertise, right? So my perspective on persuasion is coming from public speaking and thought leadership. Okay. I have other co-authors are talking about procurement, marketing, real estate, things they discovered, or techniques they were discovered on how they were using persuasion, but they never knew it, So it's different exploration of persuasion and how to use it in your business.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. So my chapter is called Give Them a Piece of You. You can't influence people if you don't give them a piece of you. Now, what's that piece? That piece can be something tangible, right? But it can also be something intangible. Your knowledge, your support, your praise, your collaboration, right? So it can be anything. But you have to give them a piece of you. And that assumes that you have a piece that you want to give. See? So, and that's a very important line for manipulation. I can make you perceive me as a person of authority, but when you ask me to do something and I don't know how to do it, I'm caught. I don't have any piece of authority to give it to you. You see? So the idea of give them a piece of you assumes that you already have something you can share with people, you can trade with people, so they say yes to you.
Great. It's been very, very insightful conversation. I think what I've learned is it's just amazing. So many things that we've talked about. And of course, when I started the conversation, I wanted to learn more about getting yes or hearing yes from others. But, I think that's where we've reached now. I've gotten so much more insight into it. I think it should be used, the techniques and the formulas should be used for creating win-win situations, not for the detriment of anyone else. That's the lesson that I'm taking out of it. It should be for the betterment of overall results that we're trying to attain.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is ethical persuasion.
Yeah. You want to hear more yes? Think about the person you persuade.
Correct. It should be about others, not about you.
Yeah.
Absolutely true. On that note, thank you so much, Leopold.
Thank you,
it's been an absolute pleasure having you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.